Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of Middle Class Rockstar. This is episode 52. And man, I am just tickled with all the people I get to chat with doing this podcast, and today is no exception. And I'll chat more about today's guest here in a moment, but it was a great conversation and was very fortunate to have him on. You can listen to this podcast on any streaming platform, and now we're also on YouTube. If you want to see our pretty faces while we talk, or in this case, if you want to see Jeremy's badass home studio, or my very average home studio, you can look at it, check it out on YouTube. Also, big news for Middle Class Rockstar Podcast. We are now joining forces with Chris K's Colorado Playlist, which is a show that is broadcast over 25 different FM frequencies across the state of Colorado. And many of these episodes, basically any of these episodes that are dealing with Colorado artists and dealing with Colorado music, I cut up an 8-minute clip, and it plays as a part of Chris K's Colorado Playlist. He plays all local music, all stuff like that, and then new releases from local artists, whatever. And he also plays this podcast in there. And then usually plays a track from the artist that's featured on the podcast right afterwards. So very thankful to Chris K, who's been on this podcast now twice as a guest, for including Middle Class Rockstar on Chris K's Colorado Playlist. Happy holidays, everybody. I may be a little different this year. You might end up playing Cards Against Humanity, that's what it's called, and drinking cocktails with your family members over Zoom this year. I don't know. But I hope you have a great Christmas. Allie and I are having our first Christmas, just the two of us, I think. We'll do some sort of outdoor meeting with both of our families. Her family's in Castle Rock, mine's in Louisville. And but I think it'll just be the two of us on Christmas Day. And we got our own place finally in March, and we have a tree and did the whole thing this year. A fake tree, of course, a small fake tree at that. But, we're definitely playing house at this point. But I wish you, whatever you celebrate or don't celebrate, a great holiday season and a happy new year. My guest this week is Jeremy Lawton. I was very excited to have him on. He's, of course, the longtime keyboardist and lap steel guitar player for Head Todd and The Monsters. And I kind of grew up with Head Todd. My dad and mom both huge music fans, and growing up, I got to go to this radio show called E-Town all the time, starting from when I was about 8 years old. I remember the first one was Keb Mo, and then I just enjoyed going every week. I never knew who the artist was or anything about him or her, but ended up falling in love with pretty much everybody that I saw. And it was a huge, I wouldn't be a musician without E-Town. So it's really cool to get to see all these great artists. So, of course, being mixed up in the Boulder music scene, you hear about Head Todd and the Monsters all the time. And my parents had CDs. I remember playing, in the CD player and in the vehicle. And I remember the very first show where I saw Jeremy with Head Todd, and I remember thinking, oh, they have somebody else this time. And it sounds pretty cool. It fills out the sound. I like it. And I was a piano player, so I loved that they added that element. And then he just never left, and he's been in the band ever since 2003, I believe. But Jeremy grew up in a very small town of Center, Colorado, which is, I think near Alamosa-ish. Am I off on that? And when I say near, it could be, an hour from there. Center, Colorado, his father was a potato farmer, and he found out early on he had an aptitude for music. And they began making trips down to Colorado Springs for music lessons. And then Jeremy ended up at DU in the commercial music program in the 90s. He was in a couple college bands in the mid-90s, including Electric Swing Set and Psychedelic Zombies. He also worked as an engineer at Kerr Macy Studios from 1994 to 1999. Played in several other bands, did some cool tours. And a couple of the other notable ones, he played in Freddie Jones' band. He's played about 50 gigs with them from 1999 until just last year when they need to fill in. He's been with the Railbenders since 2002 and has produced 3 of their 5 albums. He's produced a lot of albums for people. He's got a sweet home studio, which, like I said, you can see on YouTube, where he does all kinds of stuff. And he's recorded some of the big Head Todd records there. He's been in that band since 2003. I said that already. There it is again, since 2003. And we just chat about his musical upbringing, some fun road stories, and what's coming up next for him, what's coming up next for his groups. And you know what? I feel like we have a lot in common because we're both keyboard players. We both went to college for music. We both play lap steel guitar as a secondary instrument. And so I was really excited to chat with him for that reason. I've been producing some records. He produces records. And I thought, oh, man, I'd like to be like Jeremy when I grow up. So I was very, very excited to get to chat with him for a bunch of reasons, but partly because I feel like we have a lot of things in common. And actually, we kept chatting for another 30, 35 minutes after the episode was over, and we were both saying that we shouldn't have pressed pause. We should have just kept it going for a little longer. So maybe we'll have to have him back soon and tell some more stories. Let's jump into it right now, my conversation with Jeremy Lawton. A quick thanks to our sponsors. Patrick at PQ Mastering puts the finishing touches on this podcast. And for any of your audio or restoration needs, go to www.pqmastering.com. Also, Narrator Music. For simple and affordable licensing for sync, visit narratorrf.com.
Getting all your sounds and your stuff together.
Getting it together, yeah, with the...
Nice.
Jeremy.
You need a clicker.
I need the clicker. Yeah, that'll be after 50 more episodes. I'll get slightly professional.
Yeah, congratulations on 50 episodes.
Thank you. I didn't think I'd make it past 10. So
that's a feat, man. Like that's a lot of talking. Talking is hard sometimes.
Talking can be hard. Listening can be hard too.
Yeah, maybe harder.
Well, how are you? Have you been stuck in the house for all year? I mean, how have you been navigating everything?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm a little bored and a little grumpy, just like everyone. We had the good fortune of finishing a trip. We did like a 40 show trip that ended on March 10th or March 11th. So we were well positioned to take a short break, which we were going to do anyway. And the break's been a little longer than we expected.
Sure.
And it's not fun, but what's the alternative, So we'll see what happens.
And have you guys even started trying to map out what 2021 is going to look like yet, or are you just sitting back?
Well, at first we started trying to map out what the summer was going to look like. And then we tried to map out what the fall was going to look like. And then we tried to map out what January and February would look like. And then now we're trying to think about, well, maybe March or April, like maybe not, and like our Red Rocks show that we canceled for June, it got rescheduled for the exact same weekend next June. We're like, well, man, what about that? Like, it's really hard. And as you know, booking a show anywhere is a 3-month process if you're doing it properly, especially if you're traveling. And so it's hard to shoot for 90 days from now when people are shooting for like 14 days from now or 20 days from now. What's going to change? If you're playing in a different state, if you're playing in a different country, that. So
yeah,
it's really daunting, and everybody's having a hard time. And if you book a show at a place that might not exist a month from now or 2 months from now, but everybody's in it together. So I think there's a big boat full of people that are trying to figure it all out at the same time. And there's a lot of smart people that will figure it out. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah.
So you've been in Colorado your whole life, correct? I was reading or seeing and listening that your dad was a potato farmer, a small town here in the state, right?
Yeah, I'm from Center, Colorado, which is, if you know where the Great Sand Dunes are, down in the San Luis Valley, it's a big empty space, and Center is right in the middle of that space. Uh, and it's a really interesting place to grow up and be a kid, but that's where we were, and it was fun. And so uh,
Yeah.
I kind of grew up playing the piano in my in my uh, we had like a bunkhouse, I guess you call it, and there was an old piano in there, and I started playing that when I was 4 or 5 years old, and my mom noticed, and she thought it was cool, so she got me into piano lessons, and that's how I started.
And now, was there a place that you could go for piano lessons? I mean, was there a local piano teacher in that town, or did you guys have to travel a little bit?
Sure, there were quite a few, and my mom had a friend down maybe 5 miles down the road that was doing piano lessons, and so I started, I think, when I was 6 or 7, doing piano lessons, like straight, classical piano lessons. And when I was about, when I was about 12, um, I got really interested in computers and stuff, and my mom bought me the Yamaha DX7. It just come out in 1985 or whatever, and
Yeah.
I got really into it, and I got really into computers, and I had my Commodore 64 and like all my stuff all set up. And so my parents started taking me to Colorado Springs uh, for a more proper piano lesson that uh, I could do electronic stuff too. And so it was kind of cool. Every 2 weeks, I would drive to Colorado Springs with my dad and put my boombox in my lap. And where I lived, there were no radio stations.
Right.
There was just one radio station. They played a lot of, Spanish language music and stuff, and a little bit of country music. So when we would drive to Colorado Springs, it was a big deal for me to take my boombox and sit in the front seat, listen to the radio, and then record the songs that I had never really heard at home. It was really interesting time for me
Wow.
to, yeah. So
No kidding.
different times, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I'll say. And then what was it that made you want to pursue that after your childhood? Because you ended up at DU doing music stuff.
yeah. Well, I don't know. I think like a lot of high school kids, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew what I was good at, and I was that kid in my school. My school was really small. There were about 110 people in my high school. My class was 26, and I knew what I was good at, and I knew that I was going to go to college, and I knew a few places, and I asked my piano teacher where I should go, and so I applied to Berkeley and North Texas and DU and a couple other places. And I got into all of them, but I got a pretty good scholarship at DU, and it just felt better to me. And I was a little nervous about, being 18 years old and living in Boston by myself, like
Right.
especially being from where I was from. So I got my scholarship letter from DU, and I showed it to my mom, and I was like, "Hey, I think I'm gonna go to DU," and she was like, "Whew," you know,
Yeah.
because at that time in 1989, going to Berkeley was $21,000 a year, which seems hilarious now,
Yeah.
but that was a lot of money in 1990.
Wow.
Um, so I went to DU, and it was a reasonable fit for me, I think. Like I don't know, I felt comfortable up here, and my grandma lived up here, so I was cool with it.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I know you got involved with a couple bands, and just to touch on those really quick, Electric Swing Set and Psychedelic Zombies. Who named those bands?
Yeah, yeah. Electric Swing Set was the very first band that I played with, and we started in 1993. And the guitar player Jeff came up with that name. Nobody else had anything really substantial, and
Yeah.
three of us were uh, involved in the music school, and then there was also a drummer. That's a drummer joke. Uh,
Yeah, right.
But just like everybody's college band, we just started goofing around, having fun, and then we just started playing at Herman's, and Herman's was like uh, the cool place for us to play just because it was right down the street, and we played for quite a while. In like 94, 95, we were playing 80 or 100 shows a year, which is a lot for being 21 or 22 years old. And
All locally, or were you guys moving out
we
region?
did mostly Colorado, and we were doing lots of ski towns like Breckenridge and Steamboat, and I remember we always got really excited. Our first out of state show was in Jackson Hole at the Meiji Moose.
Oh
And that was
yeah.
such a big deal. Like, oh, we're gonna drive 7 hours, man. It's gonna be great.
Yeah.
It's gonna be so awesome. And turned out it was awesome, so that's cool. But
I think it's still there, right? I
it is, yeah, yeah. And actually, with Big Head Todd, we played there maybe 8 or 10 years ago just for fun,
Wow.
and just kind of did an underplay, and it was really fun. And it's exactly the same, and the dressing room is exactly the same. The stage is like a postage stamp. It was really fun. It wasn't really fun to load in, but everything else was great.
Was it just
So
totally packed?
yeah, it was fine. So,
Yeah, I would
but
imagine.
yeah. And then the Psychedelic Zombies was a band in Denver, like that started in maybe 1990, 91. And it's a big band, 10 or 11 people, a 5-piece horn section. Um, Big, weird, crazy funk band. And I remember always going to see them at the Mercury Cafe a lot,
Mm.
and at Herman's and some other places. And I don't know how I got started doing it. Um, but I went and started practicing with them, and then they asked me to be in the band. And so I did it for about 3 or 4 years, from 95 to 98. And that was a really great time. And everybody in that band was like kind of brainiac music guy. So, we had charts, and most of our practices, all we would do for hours was just work on time, just sitting forward or sitting back or
Yeah.
sitting right on the money, or who's supposed to sit who's supposed to sit back, who's supposed to push forward, and like all these. I learned a whole lot about physically playing with other people during that time. So it was cool.
And where was your headspace at this time in the 90s? Um were you wanting world domination with one of your bands? Were you just wanting to be a local studio guy who played in some bands for fun? What was sort of your goals at that point?
I don't know. Like this whole time, I was right when I graduated from college. I started working at a studio. What for a while was called Silo Sound, or it was called Macy Sound Studios. In the '90s, it was called Kerr Macy Music, and John Macy was there a lot. And this whole time, I was doing that. So playing in a band just kind of mingled in with that. And I think when you're playing in a band, you always have like big dreams, but like, reality kind of checks that a little bit. And those days were a lot different. You had tapes and CDs, and you're hanging up posters on telephone poles. So like just playing a reasonably successful, like hard ticket show at a local bar is kind of a form of success at that point, for
Yeah.
me. And so if we could play at Herman's and get 300 people to pay $5, we thought we were superheroes, and that was kind of as far as I could see at that point, you know.
I would say
But
you're a superhero if you can get 300 people out to a show at Herman's.
yeah, it's funny, man. I was thinking, we played at Herman's before they had the free ticket thing. Like, I don't know if, 10, 15 years ago, Herman's was doing free tickets a lot. I remember when
Yeah.
Alan Roth came up with the free ticket thing, and it was kind of not really a version of pay to play like in Los Angeles, but like, here's your tickets and hand them to people, and we'll sort of pay you, maybe,
Yeah. Yeah.
if a lot of people come. But
Sure.
yeah, so is it
I'm going kind of in chronological order. I don't know why, but it seems
okay?
to be headed
No,
in
it's
that
fine.
direction.
Yeah, yeah, whatever.
You started playing with a lot of other groups, Matthew Moon, Brethren Fast, Sherry Jackson Band, Freddie Jones Band a little bit. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about was when you were touring with Sherry Jackson, excuse me, um, you guys got to open a tour for John Hyatt. Um,
We did, yeah.
and in 1997, that would have been Walk On came out in 95, which is my favorite Hyatt album, and
Hmm.
Little Headed probably would have just come out. Uh,
Yeah, it was the Little Head
it was Little Head
tour.
tour.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
what was that like? I mean, did you guys end up getting to jam with them at all or interact? I mean, what was the experience?
No, we didn't get to play with them at all. But it was really cool for me. Like it seemed like a step forward for me, and that was kind of like first time that I had been hired just to play the piano for someone that I didn't really know well. And so I was excited just to travel and to travel for, I think we did 6 weeks or 2 months, and we went all the way to Montreal, and then we, Seattle, San Diego, like I just did the whole thing.
Yeah,
And I always remember like walking into these rooms that I thought were so enormous and cool, that are rooms that since I've been in, 20 or 30 times each, but uh, it's so cool just seeing those guys stand up there. And then they were playing Cry Love a lot.
yeah,
And the band at that time was Davey Farragher was playing the bass, and then David Immergluck was playing the guitar, and John Hyatt, I can't remember the drummer's name. And they would just play that song, and they were all sitting up there, and they were doing this little bounce, and like the lights were on, and I'm like, oh man, I'm here, I made
yeah,
it. Oh
yeah.
wait, that's not even me. I'm around something that's cool that I've heard of, and and all those shows sold really well, and they were in a bus, and we would follow their bus in a van, every night, and it was really fun. And I didn't know much about John Hyatt, but since then I now I know all those songs, and I really appreciate that quality of his writing, like it's really, really cool. And we've played with him since.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, we played with him maybe 6 or 7 years ago. We did a trip for a few weeks, and
Was that with Big Head Todd?
yeah,
Cool.
yeah, and it was a lot of fun. And it was cool because uh I got that same kind of vibe again, that same feeling. I was like, oh man, like this is cool. And he's got a powerful thing coming off the stage, with his voice, and it's really fun to see stuff like that. And it kind of took me back to when I was 25 again. It was really neat.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Hmm.
no, that's really cool. And
Yeah.
were you brought on for that tour specifically, or were you already with the group when all that started happening?
Um, I'm not so sure how I started doing that. I was friends with a guy named Brian McRae who plays drums.
Yeah.
He lives in Lyons, a great drummer, and Glenn Esparza, who's a guitar player. He's since moved to Los Angeles, but we were just kind of friends. And uh, the Sherry Jackson band had been a three-piece for a while, and they'd just done a new record produced by Steve Berlin from Los Lobos.
Right.
And I think they just wanted to, I think maybe they got this trip and they wanted to just kind of step it up a little bit and add more noise, and so I was standing closest, and so yeah, and it was that was pretty much the only trip I did. I kind of stopped doing it right after that, and they had some other people start doing it. So
And were you at this point, had you started playing much slide, lap steel stuff, or were you pretty much a keys guy at that point?
yeah, not at all. I was just playing keyboards. On that trip I took a Oregon and a Leslie and a Rhodes, and then I was I was kind of in this phase where I was doing a bunch of Rhodes pedals or stomp boxes and a twin with my
Right.
Rhodes and that kind of thing. And that was what I had on that trip. So
Oh, really cool.
yeah, yeah.
And then I guess shortly after that, you had an opportunity with Freddie Jones Band,
Mhm.
and you've done some gigs with them. How did that gig come about in '99? And as I'm looking at your timeline here, I just think it's really cool how many artists you've played with, and looking and saying, oh my gosh, you played with them. Um, it's a really neat thing as the list gets deeper. But how did that opportunity come about?
Well, again, that's just it seems to be like the same story every time, just
Yeah.
standing closest.
Uh-huh.
And I do think I have a certain skill where like I have perfect pitch and I can hear songs really fast. If I could physically write fast enough, I could write down what's happening while as I hear it, and that always happened easily for me. And then so turned in that I could sit in turned out that I could sit in with bands pretty easily like that, um, and write my charts if I needed them or whatever. Um, at that time, the Freddie Jones Band was breaking up for like the first time, I think. And Brian McRae, who had played in Sherry Jackson Band, he called me, and they just had two shows, two or three, just the two main guys in the band, and they needed somebody to come and play keyboards. And it was the first show I did was at the Gothic. I think we did maybe two nights at the Gothic.
Yeah.
And then that was kind of the end of it. That was like the first time that the Freddie Jones Band broke up, and they've kind of had a up and down kind of thing with their band over the 30 or 35 years that they've been playing. So the current iteration of their band is 6 or 7 years old, I think. So
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
And when did you start in all this mix? When did you start getting really into production and engineering? Because I know that's a big part of what you do as well.
Yeah. Like I said, in '94, I started working at a studio, and I actually was playing in, my college band still. And I went and worked for free basically for a long time, for 6, 8 months. And then I kind of became the, the house engineer, like if you walk into the door of the recording studio and you're like, I need to record something, then I'm the guy who's standing there
Yeah.
saying, sure. So that's a really great experience because you end up recording so much weird stuff, some amazing stuff, some terrible stuff,
Yeah.
some stuff that you really understand musically, and some stuff that you just don't understand at all. And like I said, when I was a little kid, I was really into computers and keyboards and MIDI and all that stuff, and that kind of parlayed itself into studio gear and equipment and engineering and production. It's a familiar story for a lot of people. And so the whole time I was doing that, when I would come home, I would just go be the house engineer at Kerr Macy until about 1999. And then Kerr Macy had an unexpected closure, a quick unexpected closure in
Oh,
1999. And I had just started moving my stuff into my basement. And so it actually was good timing for me. And that was kind of right about the time when the whole basement studio phenomenon kind of became accessible monetarily to people.
yeah.
And like 8-at machines were, attainable. And uh, the computer recording stuff was just starting to get where you could do stuff on computers. The computers still weren't good enough to do everything on, but you could do a little hybrid of computers. I used to have a digital performer on
Yeah.
my computer, and then my 8-at machines would follow it, with SMPTE. And so
So that's a totally different art now. I would say. I mean, it wasn't as simple as turning on Logic and plugging in an interface.
No, there was it wasn't that much different, but just the stuff with tape machines and all that, and the planning stages and the waiting and the time to do things was a lot longer, but otherwise it's real similar. Um, and you had to just in your music brain or your like production brain, you had to like make commitments sooner
Right.
when you're using tape machines or when everything takes forever.
Right.
So that's actually kind of healthy, to make decisions sooner than later. I think that with the new world of all computer all the time, you can get away with being a little bit lazy,
Yeah.
and no problem though. I mean, it's fine and it's really fascinating and fun, but uh, things have changed like so dramatically for the better, I think. So
Yeah. Yeah. I was
yeah.
going to ask if you thought something was lost in the new recording process.
Uh, well, so much more is gained, but it's all, a lot of it can be
Right.
fluff. I think probably like the one thing that I think about uh, when I think about what's changed is like, yeah, being able to make good choices sooner was more important, especially like in the days of 2-inch tape, like in 1995, a roll of 2-inch tape was $200,
Yeah.
and now it's way more than that. So
Mm.
um, you had to really think about what you were doing and like how you were going to plan things, and now you can just throw up, oh yeah, my song's like 164 tracks, and I'm just gonna worry about it later. I'm just gonna figure it out, and it'll be fine. And
Yeah.
it's all, it's relatively free
Right.
to just spin out in your own brain, and that's sort of a coin flip, and it can be really fun though. So
Well, and most of our listeners are probably listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or SoundCloud. But for anybody watching on YouTube, um, your background is your home studio, and it looks like you got a lot of cool stuff back there. Yeah, and you're seeing mine in the background too. I've got a packing blanket and a couple panels, but yours is the real deal back
well, that's all your kick-ass gear is on the floor. That's why I see
there.
you
That's right.
got some guitars back there too. So
There. Yeah.
and you have the SM7, so SM7 jokes for everyone. That's cool.
For everyone. I
Yeah.
actually just got it. I just because I wanted to be in on the jokes.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's the Desert Island microphone, man. That's the one.
yeah, yeah.
So
So, you've recorded a lot of records down there, right? I mean, you're
yeah.
full service studio. I know you've done some Big Head Todd records and some Railbenders records.
Yeah.
Is that something you do consistently, or just with the bands you play in?
It was for quite a while, until like 2005 or so. I found that I was gone a lot after about 2004, and it was kind of hard to keep something going. I'm not so sure about, having strangers in your home all the time is a great idea. And so
Mm,
I just kind of be selective. And also like basement drums, you can pretend that basement drums sound good. Sometimes they can.
yeah,
Uh, but there's no substitute for physical space and air around a drum set. And so I try to, go places and do drums and basics and stuff, and then bring it back here. And I think that's also a pretty familiar thing for a lot of people these days. So,
absolutely. Well, there's certainly no drums in this small room. I'll tell you that. No recording drums anyway. But
right.
so we're I guess we're in our chronological interview that turned out this way. We're now in the early 2000s, and where you've started playing with the Railbenders and with Big Ed Todd, which are still both current gigs for you.
Yeah.
How did those two first come about? Is it the right place, right time thing again?
Uh, yes, it is. In the late 90s. I played with a guy named Matthew Moon, and we played at the original Soil Dove a lot.
Hmm.
And like Herman's, same story, man. Same story all the time.
I keep
Uh,
hearing stories about Herman's when I talk to artists who are playing around in the '90s and early thousands. It sounds like that was the hot spot.
it was a little bit different. Like Herman's, um, the variety was a little wider than it is now. And, at a certain point there, Herman's was doing hard ticket shows and they're trying to get back to that now a little bit.
Yeah.
So instead of begging your friends to go see you at Herman's at 6:30 at night, on a Wednesday, like it was a little bit different where they would have 2 bands a night, maybe 3. So, um, but I was playing with this guy named Matthew Moon, and the Big Head Todd band, they had their big album in like 93, 94. And they played a couple hundred shows a year for 4 or 5 years straight. And then they burned out, and they took all of 1998 off. So the drummer, Brian, he subbed a couple shows for Matthew Moon and came and played and had fun. And I met him that way. And then in 2004, I guess they were doing a trip where they wanted to have more noise, and they had a new record coming out that had a lot of keyboards on it. And he was the only guy who had like a keyboard player's number in his phone, you know?
Wow.
So he called me, and I don't know, I'm probably exaggerating, but he called me and asked if I would like to, come practice some tunes. And I was like, yes, I would. Thank you. And I went and practiced, and they liked the noises I was making. So they hired me to do that trip. And then like a week after that, he called me and he's like, well, we're playing New Year's at the Fillmore, so you can just come do that if you want to. And I was like, yeah, that's great. He's like, well, it's 3 hours, and we'll just send you some CDs or whatever.
Yeah.
And we don't have time to practice. And so in the mail, I got like 9 CDs, like 100 songs or something.
Did you get a set list?
No,
Oh man.
no, no. But I was lucky because, Big Head Todd is like the Denver band of the 90s for me, for people my age. And I knew a lot of it kind of like subconsciously, like it was just kind of baked in a little bit. And so I wrote my charts real fast, and I knew about a third of the songs anyway, just from having heard them on the radio so much. And it went fine, and I was terrified, but it was fine. And I don't think those guys even listened to what I was doing during the show. They just kind of just letting me have my fun over there. And the Colorado Sound recording truck was right behind the Fillmore, and they were doing a simulcast to KBCO. And I went in, I knew all the guys in the truck. So I went into the truck and I'm like, hey, what's going on? They're like, oh, nothing. I'm like, did they tell you to keep all my stuff really quiet? And they're like, well, yeah. I was like, okay, that's fine.
So
I knew it was just like they were just kind of indulging me, to let me play the show, which was cool.
maybe best case scenario was them not saying anything to you then, because if they heard something off, that'd be the reason for it, for them talking.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. So.
And so this tour you did with them, because you were saying the record had a bunch of keys on it. You did not play on that. Was it Riviera?
No, it's the one after Riviera. It's called Crimes of Passion.
Okay, and you didn't play the keys on that album?
No, I didn't. So, I just got the album and then kind of, backwards learned the songs and just tried to show up. And like Todd played a lot of the keyboards on that album himself.
Oh wow.
And yeah, and because he's kind of a do-it-yourselfer, like he'd make his demos at home and finish them all and then bring it to the band all completely finished. So
no kidding.
so I just learned the songs and just tried to make my sounds sound like the sounds on the record and, just get it exactly right and really familiar for them.
Yeah.
Because that was what the job was, and they liked it. So,
And at what point did you go from feeling like, oh, they're letting me come along to play, or I'm jumping on this tour, to what point did you start to feel like, okay, I'm a member of this band. I'm in it. My opinion matters.
uh, I don't know. I think I like to make a joke that like I felt like I was in the band once when I saw a promo picture, and I wasn't on the edges, and there was like a guy in between me and the edge of the photo, so it couldn't get cropped, you know. And that's that's how I thought that maybe I was in the band, but um, I don't know how that works, and I'm not concerned with how that works, I guess, but I think after the first 1,000 shows, I guess I felt like I was in there, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
But I really respect you know, it's an interesting gig because they were 15 years into their band before I played my first show.
yeah,
And people understand that band as three people, and it's really important to like respect that and kind of and understand what that means, and it's also fun because for me, because they get to make hard decisions that I don't have to worry about, and and when I find out they're hard decisions or whatever, like they're usually right on the money. So there's two sides to like if I'm actually in the band or not. Like there's good and bad, so I don't mind it.
well, I've definitely seen it both ways. I'm a '90s baby, and I grew up in Louisville, just outside of Boulder. So my dad,
Hmm.
um, had, and I'm sure still has, the big Head Todd CDs in the basement. And I remember listening through to Stratagem and things like that. And whatever he had, the live stuff. And he would always drag me down to E Town.
Hmm.
Both my parents would, and they didn't have to drag me for very long because I loved it. But I remember um, seeing the band without it. And I remember the first time seeing it with that added element, with you in
Uh-huh.
it, and I dug it. I said, "Oh man, you put some keys in these songs. These are it's incredible." So I
Cool.
myself, I loved it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to your previous question, I'm not sure when the time was where I kind of changed my attitude from being where I was just copping parts off the CDs to like maybe kind of trying to insert my musical opinion
Yeah,
or kind of be a little more creative. And there was a time like when I was just starting to learn the lap steel. I had played pedal steel for a while, and then I stopped playing it at shows because we would fly, and to check it would be $50 a flight.
mm,
And over a weekend I would spend $200 or $300 checking my guitar. And so I didn't do that for one weekend and just bought kind of a cheap lap steel and kind of tried to learn that. And turns out I liked it more. But I liked it so much I started trying to play lap steel on every song, and everybody's like, "Hey man," because it's so much fun to make those noises.
oh yeah.
So yeah.
But they made you
So
turn it. They made you dial it back a little bit.
a little bit, but I'm still, I was still allowed to express my opinion and try to, be interpretive or like, insert a few ideas. And also like occasionally there's situations where like if I'm the music guy, like the music school dude,
Right.
like my opinion might carry a different, not more weight, but a different kind of weight
Mm,
in conversations. So
yeah.
I think that we've done a pretty good job of managing all that, and you know everybody wants the same outcome. So
Yeah.
and we've had plenty of time to practicing. So
Yeah. Going on 20 years now.
Yeah,
15?
well,
Like that.
I've been doing it 17. The band has been doing it since 1986.
Well, you sure, but I mean
Yeah,
with you with them as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
And I know you've done some recording stuff with the band in your basement as well.
Mhm.
When did that start? Did that start with Rock Steady in 2010, or was it before that?
Um, I'd say that was probably the very first time where we did a lot of stuff at my house. Um, Todd lived in Chicago for a while, and he came back to Denver. And right when he came back, his stuff was all in boxes, and so we came over to my house to practice. And we started recording our practices, and then we started making demos and stuff. And a couple of our demos were just like, well, that's the song. What's the problem? Like, let's just finish it and mix it.
Yeah,
And I was really terrified to mix it. Like, I'm terrified to mix all the time, because
right.
there's a weird like responsibility to it. It's like you're the chef who adds the salt at the end, and you could totally ruin everything.
Yeah,
you know. Uh, but I mix it, and it's okay. And some people like the way it sounds. I like the way it sounds. Okay. And after that, um, we just started having rehearsal over here and recording rehearsals. And also, we have a Pro Tools rig at shows, and I was recording all the shows with Pro Tools, and so I was in charge of that. So I was always making like roughs or live cuts of stuff that we had to send to places. And I mixed. We did a 2008 DVD from Red Rocks, and I mixed that in 5.1 here at my house, which was really hard.
yeah. Well, so on these shows that you were recording, did you? I mean, aside from worrying about playing the songs, were you having to go around all the instruments and mic things up and get tones before the show?
No, it was just a copy of whatever the monitor guy had set up for his like, lots of modern boards, you can just do a USB or
Right.
whatever right out of the back of the board and do that. So I did have a little kind of mix setup in my computer that would kind of make a pretty reasonable stereo mix at the end of every show, so we could listen to stuff if we needed to.
Yeah.
But you can burn yourself out trying to listen to your shows, though, for sure.
Oh, sure.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
I can imagine. Is there any stories you can think of, excuse me, like just a crazy road story, whether it's a collaboration with an artist or something that went terribly wrong, a missed sound check. As you look back through the years, surely there's a few.
There's a zillion of them, but uh, I don't know. One missed sound check. We went to where did we go? We went to Boise one time, and it was one of the first times we'd flown Southwest in a while. And our monitor guy, uh, on your Southwest ticket, there's like a B15, and then there's your gate number, your gate A32. So our flight left out of gate B3, and our monitor guy's ticket was B7 or something. And so he went to gate B7 looking for B3 or whatever. And so he missed the flight, and we were all on the plane, and then they closed the door and like, and when they close the door, it's game over.
That's it.
And I'm like, hey, where's Jonesy? Like, I don't know, man. Let's call him. So call him, and he's like, what's going on? Where are you? Oh, well, I'm getting a sandwich. Like, oh, well,
Oh no! Oh
you
no!
you missed the flight, and he missed the flight. Somehow he found another flight. Like, he found like a Delta or something weird, like something that doesn't happen in Boise much. And he got to the show like 5 minutes before the show started. But since it was a fly show, there was already, monitor guy and front of house guy from the venue was there. So
Jonesy
everything
didn't.
was Jonesy's fine.
He
He
didn't
he
lose his
made it.
job. Yeah, good.
Oh, no. no, not at all.
Uh,
And just funny stuff like that. I do remember. I was trying to think of funny stories. Like we did in 2012, we did a tour with the Bare Naked Ladies and Blues Traveler and Cracker,
mhm.
and Johnny Hickman from Cracker lives in Loveland, and so he's around a lot, and we were familiar with each other and good friends. And uh, Bare Naked Ladies encore, they played "Don't Stop Believin'," and right at the start of the song, there's a guitar lick. It's like, and
Right, right.
the joke for the whole trip, all summer long, was like they would start playing that, and Johnny Hickman would come out from the side of the stage and like, and like there's a spot on him when he walks around, and then they play the song. And Bare Naked Ladies actually is a very underrated, very good band. Like
Yeah.
everybody's just like top shelf musician. So Johnny came out there and he rocks out the solo or whatever, and then we were playing as the tour comes to a close. Like there's 4 shows left, 3 shows left, and like we've done 25 shows or something. And everybody's like, so what are we gonna do? And like the third to last show was in Boston at the outdoor thing in the Bay. I can't remember the name of it right now. And I had this idea, and I'm like, for like a couple days, I just went to every guy and every other band. I'm like, okay, so for the Journey song, everybody grabs a guitar, strap on a guitar. You don't have to plug in anything, just wear a guitar.
Yeah.
Or a broomstick, or like a drum, or like whatever. And then when it's his turn to come play the, we're just all going to be, there's just going to be a line of like 25 dudes all with guitars, and everybody's going to be going, like we made this big parade all the way around the stage. And like every guy from every other band was like doing it with guitar. And then like the end of the song,
Yeah.
everybody's like in the front, like, and it's funny. And it's sort of funny, sort of lame story, but the problem was there were 2 shows left. And then so the next 2 shows, you're just like on pins and needles. You're like, oh my God, what are they going to do to
Right.
us? Or are they going to like kick us off? Like they're not going to kick us off on the last show. And they found out whose idea it was.
Yeah.
And so we're sitting there, and then we were in Portland, Maine, and there's a YouTube video of it. We're in Portland, Maine. We're playing some song, and our encore for our like 30-minute set or whatever was Sexy and I Know It. And we had this weird, like kind of Delta weird slidey, noisy version of it.
Yeah.
And so we're sitting there and start playing that, and like, and Ed Robertson from the Bare Naked Ladies comes out from the wing, and he's wearing a thong, like a lady's thong, like, or like a dude stripper thong, and it's like shiny. And apparently he's gifted, in the low end, and so he's running around like, and his ass is hanging out, and he ran up on the drum riser and he starts dancing in the drummer's face, and like all his junk's like in the drum set, and like, and it was awful. It was awful, and it was great because he totally won the battle. But just funny stories, there's you
Yeah.
get tired, if you're traveling for 6, 8 weeks or something, or months at a time, like your brain comes up with weird ideas.
You got to make your own
So,
fun somehow.
I guess, yeah.
You guys have had the same crew and everything for a long time, right? Same monitor people. Awesome Dan's been with the group forever. Right? It's the same.
Yeah, well, the band had the same, well, it's had a few tour managers. Awesome Dan been doing it for 4 or 5 years. He's not doing it in 2020 because
Right. No one is.
no one's doing anything.
Yeah.
uh like in the 90s, the band had a tour manager, Matt Need, and then this guy named Jeff Waring, who was the guitar tech. He turned into the tour manager when Matt Need finished, and so he did it for almost 20 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Oh.
Yeah. It's
tight knit
interesting stuff though.
tight knit community.
Well, it's important to, if you're in a confined space with your friends, to understand what your friends can handle from you and what they can't, and
Yeah.
understand what people need and don't need. And it's a it's a challenge just personally to hang out with the same people like that all the time. But everybody has the same goal, so we figured out how to do it.
Yeah. No, as so
Mhm.
many bands don't figure out how to do or can't do for a very long time, and um, you guys have done it for a very long time.
A while, yeah.
And as we just kind of referenced 2020 shenanigans again, you guys have been doing this monthly video thing for a while where it's either been something from a live performance or, like the mini documentary on you that came out last month. Did you guys feel like you were very equipped to deal with this? It seems like you guys kind of already were, um, had your online community and we're doing things well.
Well, there's a couple reasons for it. Like, we were sitting around trying to think about, well, is it time to make a record or something, or an album or an EP? And like, I don't know. Is it? Sure, I guess. Like, should we try to do that? And like, how are people consuming music? And like, where are people going to see this or hear it?
Hmm.
Um, is this going to be on regular terrestrial radio? And the answer is maybe. If we pay a lot of money, we can
Yeah,
get it on the radio, and we can throw it on Spotify and or send it to TuneCore or something and just throw it out there and flip a coin, like. So
sure.
we're trying to think about, well, how can we kind of try to be creative and still kind of insert ourselves in Facebook and Instagram and all that, and have content for our fans who we know are going to be there, who like what we do, and how can we maintain that relationship and do something a little different, have a little bit of fun. And so we're like, well, let's learn a song and record it and film it all in one day,
Yeah,
once a month. And like, it doesn't have to be this big, like, oh, we're making a record, we're trying so hard, we're gonna like stage the release of the record, we're gonna get everything lined up, and we're gonna spend a whole bunch of all of our money to do this. Like, we just wanted to have like easy, fun content.
yeah,
And so we're like, well, let's just make a video every month. And so that's what we did. And some of them do better than others, and I don't know what the real value of it is, but the perceived value for us and for people who are watching what we're doing is immense, and it's fun, and it's something to talk about. And in lieu of making a record, uh, it's something different, a lot of fun. And then maybe we'll make an album at some point, soon. But
mm, sure.
I don't know. It's different, that the music industry is still operating in a certain respect on like an album cycle kind of uh thing, but
Yeah,
less than ever, and there's a lot of artists who just put out a single and like put it out and get behind it and see what happens. And so we're not so much trying to put out singles as just having something for some kind of maintenance content for the people who we know are there waiting for us. And
right.
because maintaining your current group of fans is like kind of the new success, like it's a form of success, like finding those people and doing the things that they enjoy, and
Right.
kind of making a little bit of a two-way relationship in a certain respect is more important than ever.
And what's been your favorite of those videos that's come out? If we toss one in the show notes, what's the one to go? Everyone should go watch.
Well, obviously the mini documentary about me is the best one, But
Hey, that one was very well done. There was drones in the filming there.
yeah.
That's high
So
tech.
um I don't know, like we did have fun. Like I'm a little bit down on doing covers, unless they're Fleetwood Mac covers. I love those. But
Yeah, thanks.
um there was this weird thing. I have a buddy who always told me that we should play Brandy by Looking Glass.
Yeah,
And then some people sent emails to our website like, you should cover Brandy by Looking Glass because the guy's voice sounds just like Big Head Todd. I'm like, no, whatever.
yeah,
And then so like we were kind of at a loss one month for something to do. I think it was probably April or May. And like, well, do you want to do a fresh song? And like, well, maybe not quite right now. Like, should we do just some bizarre cover just for the heck of it? Because music.
yeah,
like
yeah.
like yeah. I'm like, well, my buddy Greg's like, he loves Looking Glass Brandy. Like everyone says, and like somebody else was like, my friend so and so also told me we should play that. I'm like, well, let's just learn it. And it is cool. It is one of those cooler 70s songs that's not 145. It's just like there's some interesting stuff going on it, and there's a horn chart, and like, fine, let's do that. And same thing. Learn it, record it, and film it all in was about a day and a half for that one because there were extra people involved.
Right, right.
Uh, so I don't know, it's fun. And then I was trying to do an experiment with that one where I've never really like tried to hard sell a video to somebody, and so I posted it on my Facebook and stuff a lot,
Yeah,
and it did really well. It did 250,000 views in a
yeah.
month, and then it totally died. Like, but I was just trying to navigate that world because there's so much about how to make a video travel on the internet, like, and I had never experimented with that before. So
And what do you think it was about that video? I know it was cool. I first saw it on Erica Brown's page.
mhm.
I saw there's a bunch of cool local musicians that were in on it. What do you think it
Yeah,
was about that video that made it get 250,000 views in a month? I
I
mean,
don't know. I think because there's girls in it, and Erica Brown looks cool, man. Like, no matter, I've never seen a picture or a video of Erica Brown where she doesn't look cool,
yeah,
and that's a real skill, man. Like, and she's got a great attitude all the time
yep,
uh regarding music, and like, that's cool. And CJ, the other lady singing, she looks fucking cool, and like, you see cool people and singing, and like, uh as far as like why, I don't know, like, our uh who knows, or like, how sometimes content will get somewhere you didn't know it was going to get, and then it'll go
right.
without you, it'll go somewhere. So maybe that's what happened to it.
I feel
So
embarrassed to say this, and maybe this is the '90s baby coming out. But when I first saw it, I didn't realize right off that it was a cover. And one of my friends said, "Oh, dude, are you serious? You got to go back and
yeah,
the original." So I listened to the original and then went back and watched it
yeah.
again. But now I realize how embarrassed I should be that I wasn't really familiar with the original.
Oh, I don't know, like, it's like the number 12 or number 13 Billboard song of 1972.
Right.
So that's a while ago.
Yeah.
But I thought it was really interesting how people, uh, just lay people, are like, "Oh my gosh, that version is so amazing. You guys did such a great job." And I was like, well, like, we're doing, like, it's total carbon copy. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, like, we pulled the horn chart exactly, and we added one extra part, and instead of men singing, it's women, and a girly man in the back. But like I tried to cop the Wurlitzer part, like note for note, just because I thought it was cool. And sometimes, like doing a cover, it's fun to figure out exactly what happened and then apply your own idea once you found out what actually happened, But
Yeah.
it's interesting to see how people are like, oh my gosh, that's so great. I'm like, yeah, it is great. It's great the way it was. And it just
Played it.
has has a different sound quality. That's all, it's just a little brighter and has more people.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
interesting, but
Hard to know where that stuff comes from and what travels and why. Uh,
yeah.
as you look ahead now over the next few years of your career, um, do you see? I mean, obviously you can't see the future, but do you see anything changing for you or wanting to change for you? Have you always wanted to be in a punk hair band that writes songs about the color pink? I mean, is there anything that you feel like I'd really like to do this while I'm still here on Earth?
I don't know. I'm hoping that someday I'll learn how to play one instrument really well. Like I'm kind of like okay at playing a couple things. Um, I would like to get really good at playing one instrument. Um, I think at some point I'll put out some of my own songs.
Mm,
Um, I always, I have 50 in my head and I have 20 in my computer, but nobody has any of them anywhere. So, um, and that's, like when you talk to like your songwriting buddies about it, advice for songwriters, and you're like, make a bunch of songs, be prolific, make a song every day, like write 100 songs.
right.
If you come up with 10 good ones, that's 10 great songs. And so I've never been able to follow that advice
Mm,
in my own life. And so I think before I stop, I would like to follow that advice and write, you know, 70 or 80 songs and come up with 8 or 10 good ones,
mm.
and let someone hear them. But I'm still, even being 48 or whatever, I'm still way too precious about my own stuff for
Yeah.
people. And I hope that before I wrap it up, I'll get over that.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know. I'd like to, produce more albums at home and stuff. And I used to do it so much for local bands, and then I got a little busy and I kind of slowed down a little bit, and doing that kind of stuff, and like mixing. I do like mixing. I just hate finishing mixing, you
Yeah.
know.
Right. Right.
And a lot this year, since I've been sitting around this year, I've been practicing a lot of mixing and stuff. And it's definitely not like riding a bike, you have to do it all the time. And just the tastes change so fast
Right.
in mixing, and the sound of songs uh, changes so fast now,
You
so
have
much
to
faster than it used to.
Do you have to listen for different things when you mix a record now versus when you mixed a record 12 years ago?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But it's a lot easier to listen to so much more stuff now, you know. Um, I feel like the way people are mixing songs right now, a lot of people are skipping some mastering processes sometimes, and like people are just like this guerrilla attitude, that a lot of people have. And so you have to listen a lot to the way people are arriving at the end of their song, and
Mm,
not just production ideas, but just like overall sounds of things. You just have to listen to everything, and I do like listening to everything.
yeah.
Um, but when I'm sitting here, like if I'll just get my mix the way I like it, and get it pumped up a little bit, and then just flip through Spotify right next to it over and over and over and over and over, and just find out what I'm doing wrong, and then with the computer stuff now, the advances and everything in technology, there's so many more ways to get it wrong. you know,
right, sure.
like, yeah, like the world is your oyster, and you can definitely screw things up quickly. Whereas in the old days, the tools to ruin everything were a lot more expensive, you know? So, but
well, thanks for, the stories and the insight. It's much appreciated. Thanks for coming on. Did we leave out anything? Did we skip any years?
I don't know. I don't know if I had anything cool to say except just where I'm from and what I did, what I do. I don't know.
It's all really cool stuff. So, I'll keep you on the line for just a second if you don't mind, but I'll say goodbye to the audience formally. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for coming on. And I'll chat next time. I want to do the interview in your basement because that looks really cool.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, come check it out.
Thanks.
All right.
All right. Thank you to Jeremy Lawton, my guest today. Great dude. I'm glad I got to know him. I'm glad we chatted. I have a feeling he'll be back sometime. That was a lot of fun. We're going to play things out with a Big Head Todd song. I asked him what he thought would be appropriate, what fits the vibe, what song we should use, and he suggested New World Horizon, which is the title track off of their 2017 album. If you enjoyed the episode and you'd like to support, we're on Patreon at patreon.com/Andy Sydow, SYDOW. I post up content regarding both the podcast and my personal music career, and you can support for less than one cup of coffee per month. For $3, you can support and, help me continue to grow this thing and reach more listeners, get in more people's ears. If you'd like to help out in a completely free way, please consider rating and reviewing wherever you listen to your podcasts. For instance, if you're listening on Apple Music, it just takes a few seconds to hit that 5-star. And if you have a few more seconds, say, hey, this podcast is awesome. Jeremy was awesome. 5 stars. Go listen to it. I'd love it. It's actually a really, really huge help. It only takes a few seconds and is completely free. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, hate mail, or death threats, you can direct them to me at middleclassrockstar@gmail.com. Thanks so much for listening. Here's New World Horizon.
Till your dying day, old world without you till your dying day. In the morning when the sun comes up, I so want to be home. It's so hard to get out of my bed and get to working on the killing floor. Get up, a new world's arising. Get up. Get up. A new world's arising.
middle class rock star.